Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So halfway across the bridge. All right, this month we're exploring how to manage the gap between the incubation of our God-inspired aspirations and divinely directed dreams and the actual, tangible fruition of them. Because last Sunday, today, and next Sunday are all about building, actually revealing, the bridge over that gap. I'm going to begin this Sunday where we left off last week, bridging the gap, so to speak, between our 2 weeks. Last Sunday I shared a couple of passages from The Alchemist. Has everybody read The Alchemist by Paul Coelho? Definitely should be on your reading list. We did it as a book study. It's The Alchemist, a fable about following your dream. It was written in the late 80s by a Brazilian author, and it's about a shepherd boy who has a dream, a really big dream, which he reluctantly decides to pursue. And in that pursuit, he definitely has to bridge a gap. Not just a gap, but a real chasm. So I ended last week's talk with a passage in which the young shepherd had finally met the alchemist, someone he's been looking for throughout the book because he believes the alchemist will have the answers to how he can find his dream, and they are having a conversation. The boy is trying to decide if he should continue going after his dream. At that point, it's looking pretty impossible, and it's gotten very difficult. Has anyone ever felt that way when you start pursuing your dream and it gets kind of hard? Yeah. Here's the passage where we ended on last week. "My heart is afraid it will have to suffer," the boy told the alchemist one night as they looked at the moonless sky. "Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God," the boy told his heart. "When I have been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous because I've known that every hour was part of the dream that I would find. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve." And I want to read a bit now from that place because it will take us to our work today. Thought about providing milk to go along with the cookies out there for this story time portion of today's message, but we really didn't want to get into having to take a nap after that, right? So, okay, I decided against that. So here we go. "So his heart was quiet for an entire afternoon. That night, the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart began to tell him things that came from the soul of the world." Those who were with us last week, what would we say that this is? Our intuition. And do you remember what we called intuition? It is that voice that loves me. Not just the voice within, but the voice that loves me. Because we have a lot of voices in our heads, right? A lot of things telling us things that we don't necessarily want to listen to. So again, that night the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart began to tell him things that came from the soul of the world. He said that all people who are happy have God within them, and I would simply edit that to say that all people who are happy know they have God within them. Know, because we all have God within us, but to know that we have God within them, within ourselves. And that happiness could be found in a grain of sand from the desert, because a grain of sand is a moment of creation. Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him, his heart said. We, people's hearts, seldom say much about those treasures because people no longer want to go in search of them. We speak of them only to children. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction, toward its own fate. But unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their personal legends. That's the author's term for God-inspired aspirations and divinely directed dreams, and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out indeed to be a threatening place. Remember the story I told you about the man who goes to a city, and he asks the gentleman sitting out in front of the city, "What kind of a city is this? Are the people kind? Is it a safe place to live?" And the guru says, "Well, what was the city you came from like?" Oh, it was wonderful. The people were generous and kind and loving, and they welcomed everyone who came, and they shared of their good. He says, well, this is what you'll find here, too. And another gentleman came up and asked the same question. And the guru said, well, what was the city like that you came from? It was horrible. They were miserable there. They were thieves and murderers, and they took from you, and no one was kind and welcoming. He says, that's what you will find here. Wherever we go, we take ourselves with us. What we are looking for, we are looking with. So, their hearts speak more and more softly. We never stop speaking out, but we begin to hope that our words won't be heard. We don't want people to suffer because they don't follow their hearts. Why don't people's hearts tell them to continue to follow their dreams? The boy asked the alchemist. Because that's what makes a heart suffer most, and hearts don't like to suffer. From then on, the boy understood his heart. He asked it, please, never stop speaking to him. He asked that when he wandered far from his dream, his heart press him and sound the alarm. The boy swore that every time he heard the alarm, he would heed its message. That night he told all of this to the alchemist, and the alchemist understood that the boy's heart had returned to the soul of the world. So what should I do now? The boy asked. And that is where we will leave the story for today, picking it up again next week. Today we will mine some of the gold contained in what we just read. Last week we looked at 2 spiritual tools to keep the bridge revealing itself at least 2 steps ahead of us. One was cultivating the open moment, which means to open the tiniest crack in the wall that stands between I can't have this dream and here are all the reasons why, and the actual experience of the dream by believing that it actually just might be possible, because with God, all things are possible. Let's say that together. With God, all things are possible. With God, all things are possible. And now, have your God-inspired aspiration and divinely directed dream in mind and say, with God, this is possible. With God, this is possible. And the second spiritual tool of last week was to listen to our intuition, that voice that loves us, knowing that it will never, never steer us wrong. Actually, I did have moments of intuition this past week, which were, I know, wow, it was interesting, but that's a whole nother story. This is the voice of the heart that the alchemist is talking about. These tools take you partially across the bridge, but it still may feel like you are hanging out in the gap. That's how the little shepherd boy felt in the passage that I just read. I do understand that can be scary and it can be really even discouraging. One of the reasons perhaps that you haven't scurried fully across the bridge to the other side, like Indiana Jones did in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, is that you see a big old problem, an obstacle, an obstruction in front of you, and you don't know how to go around or under or through it. So you kind of hang there in the gap. You're kind of stuck, or it feels like you're stuck. Anybody can relate to that situation in their life? Yeah? Here is our spiritual tool for today. The realization that the problem is never the problem. The problem is never the problem. This is a concept that we have discussed at length here, so I'm hoping that you know the answer to this question. If the problem is never the problem, then what's the problem?
I'm thinking.
Ding, 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 ding. The way I am thinking about the problem. The answer is it's the way I'm thinking about the problem. So problem, what problem? There isn't one. There isn't one. But our belief that there is one can absolutely keep us from successfully walking across the bridge to reach the achievement of our personal legend. It's heavy stuff, because I can look back and see where I thought there were problems in many instances in my life, and then I get to the other side and I go, well, that really wasn't it. That was just me holding myself back. On page 456 of The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, "We must return the way we came. As little children who know that life is good and to be trusted, we are to approach our problems as though they were not. Approaching them in this manner, they will vanish." So the real issue for us, and today's spiritual tool for helping us reveal another leg of the bridge, is to see the problem in a completely different light. That is what the conversation the little boy had with the alchemist and what his heart told him. And I want to share with you another story this morning, a story you are most likely familiar with, but one in which you may have missed a key, vital subtlety to the story, as I did the 100 times that I heard it in the church of my youth. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, wait, that's the wrong story. All right, the Israelites, I know I have Disneyland on my mind because they're opening Star Wars Land. I'm so excited. Okay, so the Israelites and the Philistines were fighting a war, and it was a messy war. On a particular field battle, there was a Philistine by the name of Goliath of Gath, who was a giant among a bunch of really, really big guys. Twice a day, at dawn and at dusk, Goliath would step out between the two armies and shout to the Israelites, "Let's do war a different way. One of you step forward and fight me to the death, and the people of the man who loses will become the slaves of the people of the man who wins." So now you know which story I'm talking about, right? Everybody familiar with this biblical story? Okay. So what happens in this story? David, a shepherd boy with his slingshot, slays the giant. Right? Everybody remember this? David and Goliath? Okay. I think there's even songs. Okay. But it's really so much richer than that. Whenever Goliath would make his taunting offer, the Israelites would scatter, running off into the hills, because no one wanted to fight this giant. Now Jesse had 4 sons, and the 3 eldest were soldiers. One day he sent the youngest son, David, to take some food to his brothers. He arrived at the front just in time to hear one of Goliath's rants, and when the terrified soldiers ran away, David ran with them. Sometime later, David is trying to find his scattered brothers, and in search he hears the details of what's been going on. He learns that at least twice a day for 40 days, Goliath has been making this proposition. Let's pause this story for a moment. What's the significance about this? What does 40 days mean symbolically? Symbolically, it means 40 days means all the time it takes for transformation. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days, 40 nights. All the time that it takes for transformation. So back to the story. King Saul really wants this war to be over. So to encourage one of his soldiers to step up, he sweetens the pot. He makes it very sweet indeed. He promises that whatever soldier will fight Goliath and obviously win, will not only will he receive great riches, not only will he nor anyone in his family ever be taxed again, who would like that? But the real deal sweetener is he will get the hand of the king's daughter, the princess, in marriage. Now David thinks this all sounds pretty good, so when he finally finds his brothers, he talks to them about this and how he might just like to go for it. Not only would he save the Israelites, but what a deal for him. It's pretty sweet. Their reaction was, as we might expect, "Are you freaking crazy? Have you seen the size of this guy? And you just a scrawny shepherd? You're not even a soldier." And there it is, thinking the problem is the problem. And granted, it looks very big and very, very scary. And very much like a problem, with the consequences for losing pretty darn severe, not just for himself, but, for his entire country. So you have a dream, and you've taken your leap of faith and stepped out, and then you've walked somewhat across the bridge by cultivating the open moment and by listening to the voice that loves you. And now here you are, faced with Goliath. What do? Quick, run back to the safe side? Well, you could. But that is what makes a heart suffer most, and hearts don't like to suffer, as we learned in The Alchemist. Remember, everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him, but we have to go and get it. We have to bridge the gap to experience it. So we can take a clue from David and change our perception of the problem. The problem is not the problem. In fact, it isn't even an obstacle. Instead, it is the way to our dreams. Were it not for Goliath, David would not have had this opportunity. So he turned his entire attention away from Goliath and onto the dream, riches, no taxes, the princess. In other words, he focused on his vision, his intention, his dream, not on what was standing in front of him. This is our work as we stand midway on the bridge. We must keep our eye on the prize, so to speak. Fortified with his dream, bikini on the beach, right? Bikini on the beach, all right. Fortified with his dream in his heart and his mind, he pressed forward, listened to his intuition, not to put on all of the armor the king wanted him to wear. He picked up 5 smooth stones, put one in his sling, and with one perfect shot, he felled the giant. The obstacle removed, the way cleared. Not everyone in that camp had the same opportunity, but as we learned from the alchemists, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their personal legends and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out, indeed, to be a threatening place. But not you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Not any of us see that, right? You're willing to walk across the bridge, and you are willing to face whatever may seem like a problem, even an obstacle, and perceive it differently. It is, in fact, the way to your God-inspired aspiration and divinely directed dreams. So, are you ready to continue that journey? Today we have had 2 shepherd boys give us the same message, to dive deep into your internal resources, to know that God is with you, to see the problem not as a problem, not as an obstacle, but rather as a way to your dream, and to keep your attention, your focus on your dream. And once again, remember, as the alchemist told the little boy, every second of the journey is an encounter with God. And so it is.